people just naturally think, oh, there's no end. I have all this capacity. I can do whatever. But actually reality slaps you in the face. I see so many people stripped of joy and happiness in life because they're trying to chase something that like they're never going to achieve.
Welcome back to another episode of the New Rules podcast. It's your girl, Breezy, and I am here with our wonderful host, Mr. Adrian Crawford. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing well. It is a little bit gloomy outside here in Tallahassee, which is my type of weather, but I like the gloomy weather, but it's been, a little bit hectic here, having tornadoes here, and we're supposed to be having flash floods. So
I know. Did you see that we're actually under tornado watch again?
I saw that, and I saw we're under a flood warning or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm a very much so. I love the rain. I love all that type of stuff, but not when it becomes like dangerous. I just like a good rainstorm, but not something that could harm people. So it's been a little gloomy here in Tallahassee, but besides that, everything's good.
Yeah. We recently, which I think this episode will drop, unknown when this episode will drop, but this past week we updated our podcast cover. We did a little photo shoot. We took some videos. We got some new content. Shout out Lauren, new producer in the back. You know what I'm saying? Again, Lauren is a very funny individual. Her and Bree, she's hilarious.
I mean,
vibe.
They do vibe. I mean, it is a high level white girl connection
between
you two. A high level white girl connection.
You got us there.
I mean, listen, man, just the pumpkin spice latte vibes are high.
I don't drink pumpkin spice lattes. Do you?
I don't touch Starbucks either.
Okay.
I'm sorry. You just only.
Stop.
I forgot. Red eye. Got it. Okay.
No.
Anyways, very excited about the new podcast cover.
Yes,
as you can see, the vibes are immaculate. So keep looking out for some new content on Instagram, YouTube. You can listen to us on any podcast platform. We also post our long forms with video on YouTube, and then we have an Instagram account called Write New Rules.
Absolutely. Follow, like, again, whatever we do, again, just keep sharing. If what we've done has been helpful at all to you, we would love to get our content out there to people just to be a help to them.
So today, we're going to talk about this idea of you can't be good at everything. Boo. The people are sad to hear. Why do you think this is an important topic to discuss?
I think it's important because in an era where we have so many access points, and we've talked a lot about access points and how we're constantly inundated with information, and and so with that, we're always kind of like just filling our lives up with stuff. And then also when we're kind of connected, kind of to everyone via social, whatever, it's always sometimes like a competition, right? You're looking at this person maybe in your industry. You're looking at this person in their family. You're looking at this person at your same age and their looks. And everything is always like you're looking at people. And then so you're always trying to like, how can I be the best? Because all the stuff that gets great content, right? Or I'm going to say everything gets a lot of boost in content are always people who are talking about how to be successful and all this. So it could be successful as a mom, successful as an entrepreneur, successful as a dog owner, like successful at everything. And what can happen, I think that's in the atmosphere, is that now you begin to have these unrealistic expectations. And I think so many times people are chasing ghosts, things that they're never going to be great at, and actually missing out. And I think it strips joy from people. I think people a lot of times are unhappy because they have unrealistic expectation of trying to be great in all areas of their lives.
So we're living in what a lot of commentators are calling the age of authenticity. Where do you think the disconnect is? Because it seems like we're having so much conversation around the term authenticity, being yourself, knowing yourself, and at the same time, we're also desiring the copy and paste. Where do you think the disconnect is?
I think, Charles Taylor was kind of the first person I ever heard talk about this. He's a Canadian philosopher, and he talks about this age of authenticity. And what he meant by that was that we have kind of gone to the fact of where no outside forces can really help shape or define us. We ultimately define who we are from within. So before, it could be like your family, it could be your neighborhood community, it could be a religious organization. That could be the thing that actually could shape you. Now it's everything within you to decide to do that. I think the disconnect now is that when you are the one deciding who you are by what you feel, or what you may sense inside. I just want to be whatever. A lot of times that's fed and that's kind of pulled out of insecurity. That's a lot of times when we want to pull stuff out that doesn't line up, it's made out of many times out of our own fears of the future. What if I'm not this, or fears of our past, that if I don't change this, I'm going to be like I was growing up, or that same thing's going to happen to me. And so what I think it is, it becomes this huge disconnect within people, but we're also trying to be these individuals as well, right? Everybody has a social media platform. Everybody has their own Twitter account. You can go live and do whatever, whenever you want to. And so I think we have more access to be individuals and be authentic and show that, but I also think that we're just still insecure humans, that many times when we say we want to be authentic, what we're ultimately trying to get to is we just want to be, what do we take to actually get views? Because here's the crazy thing. What if who you are doesn't get a lot of views? What if who you are doesn't make you, with a lot of followers? What if who you are doesn't make you as much money as you think it should make you? Then what ultimately then that becomes a measuring stick. Now you're looking at, man, am I enough? And so a lot of times people just end up doing stuff that just fits them. They say they want to be authentic, but they actually want to do stuff that I believe actually gives them the significance and influence that they want.
So why can't we be good at everything? I feel like to some people that's obvious.
Yep.
But playing devil's advocate here, like, why can't you be good at everything?
Because I think there's limitations to humans. I think that humans have great capacity. Human beings have the ability to create. I mean, that's the amazing thing. Humans are the only ones who we can visualize something in our minds and literally go do it. And that's an amazing thing. So I don't want to say that humans don't have great capacity, but like you do have a limit to yourself. And so I think that when you don't feel like, when you live in a world that talks so much about abundance, we have access, what you will do is live your life like there's no end to it. And so people just naturally think, oh, there's no end. I have all this capacity. I can do whatever. But actually reality slaps you in the face. It's just one of those things. And so I don't care how much you think, how much you pray, how much you meditate, whatever, you have a limit. And at some point in time, you're not going to be great at stuff. And I think that's just kind of where people are, because they're just so obsessed with hearing so much about the abundance and what they want. And I can do we were told that. I mean, you can be anything that you want to be. Like our parents were telling us that, and that's not true. And so that's kind of the mindset we grew in. So if all of a sudden, if I can be anything I want to be, it doesn't matter about limits. I can go be this. I can be this. I can be an astronaut. I could go, all of a sudden I can be a rapper. I can be a DJ. I can do anything that I want to do when, truth be told, there's only so much. Now, can you do a lot? Yes. But will you be great at all that? No, not at all.
So you're basically saying there is kind of a blueprint to which we were all designed. Mm-hmm. Where we are unique. We kind of use this analogy with snowflakes. Yep. It's like no snowflake is the same, but it's all still frozen water.
Yep.
So part of the wisdom in life is understanding the part of you that is unique, that is its own snowflake, but also having the humility to know that you're still just frozen water.
Yep.
How do you apply that within your own life?
I think that for me, it's been a journey because it took me a long time, and even still now, I fight and wrestle with that, to be okay with I can't do everything. I feel like I have a high capacity in my own life. I feel like there's a lot of things I can do. The entrepreneurial side of me can handle a lot. But I think what I started to come to realize is like, but what can I be really good at? And I think what I started to get to is not so much a job, but really, what is the theme? What's the thing underneath? I begin to look back on my life, and I begin to realize, like, where were things that I constantly did? We talked about sovereign themes, and I started realizing I was always kind of a disruptor in my life. But then I started digging in. Why did I disrupt? And I think the disruption was because, man, I just wanted the real thing. Whatever it was, I wanted the real thing. If I was talking to somebody and I saw them living a certain way, I wanted to help disrupt their life so they can really live out the real thing. If I saw an industry, like when I first started doing basketball skill training, no one was really doing it here. And a lot of kids weren't built for just football and baseball, but they actually had opportunity for basketball. I wanted to unlock that because authenticity really mattered to me, because in my whole life growing up, and I've told the story, I never felt like I was really authentic. I wanted to be. And so that's kind of what I do. So I've kind of nailed it down. That's the unique parts, is to unlock authenticity. And that's what I want to be the best at. I want to be the best person at honestly unlocking that in the lives of individuals, communities, corporations, whoever, because I believe when that happens, human flourishing actually occurs. And so that's what I work on to be the absolute best in that. And the beauty of that, I can do that in a lot of different industries and a lot of different vocations.
So you just use the idea of unlocking authenticity for you, and sometimes you also say that you exist to suffocate the falsity out of people, which I'm chuckling because it's so intense, and every time you say that, people are like,
do. Yeah.
Oh, you say, I like the best time ever, and people are like, oh, God.
And then I think they get a little bit intimidated, like, oh, the 6'6" black guy is saying you want to suffocate people, too.
Suffocate.
So I think you're going to get, you know what I'm saying? So I know I probably need to be careful what environments I'm saying that in. But.
No, I think you choose it for the perfect times. Because we kind of do that on purpose.
We do, because sometimes I'm in that room, and it's always like, you know, it's like two boomers in there, and they're just like, you know, this stuff is stupid. And I'm like, you dudes are idiots. And so anyway, so I normally just pop off at people like that, and it kind of like shocks them. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So anyways, with that in mind, do you think that, kind of getting to the idea of nature versus nurture, do you think that you were born with that mission for your life, or do you think that was something that was developed over time?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think I was born with it, and I think it was developed. I do believe that calling is, like I like to say this way, I think calling and purpose, I think it's buried inside of humans. People ask me all the time, do you feel like you have multiple like callings and purpose? I don't believe that. I think you do have one. Now, I think you have multiple assignments, but not multiple callings and purpose. So I believe that it's buried in you. I think you're born with it, but then I think it's a journey to actually discover it. And I think sometimes a lot of circumstances actually nurtures that even more. So I think it's actually both.
So to unlock authenticity is kind of what you would say would be the call on your life.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that you say you do that, because, you know, from there it's always like, well, how do I do that?
Yep.
And you have 3 ways, which is catalyst, communicator, and connector.
Yep.
Are those the most updated ones, or have you changed it at all?
I would probably say it's catalyst. Was it catalyst? Yeah, kind of the communicator for sure. And I've kind of mixed up sometimes between connector and coaching. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times I've started to realize that one of the things I really do well, and I think I kind of went away from this, was the coaching side of it, because I was a coach's kid. So you know how it is as a man. You're like,
you don't want that label.
Yeah, you don't want that label. Your dad did this, whatever. But I actually really think I find myself a lot of times in those kind of coaching environments. You know what I mean? I really think that's what I do within the organizations that I lead. I really am more of like coaching people how to lead. And I lead myself, but I'm also, you know, but I'm also helping people like yourself and others coach them as they go. So I would probably say those 3 things.
Yeah, so I feel like you spend a lot of your time focusing on how to develop yourself within those 3 areas, ultimately leading to unlocking authenticity.
Yep.
When you, let's take communication, for example, because I feel like it's a very like pragmatic one or practical one. When you know that's something that you want to be good at, how do you differentiate between when you start to experience failures in something you want to grow at? How do you know whenever, these failures are telling me I'm not actually good at this thing, versus these failures are a part of the growth and I have to keep pounding the rock?
Yeah, that's great. I'll tell a story, if I can, about how I recently how it really unlocked me more. I hired someone, you know, because again, one of the other things I do is like I communicate a lot, I preach. And so I actually hired a preaching coach or communication coach. And this guy is a PhD from Princeton, brilliant. And so I was spending time with him, and we've been working for a little bit. And finally, because, you know, when you're communicating, preaching, doing stuff like that, how do you really like compare and know if you're good? I mean, the competitive side of me, yeah, like I want to know where do I stand, because you spend so much time doing it. And so I asked him, it's like, hey, like, where would you like put me? And so he sat there and he's like, no, he's like, you could not change anything and retire, and you still would be probably like, you know, top 5 or 10% of people who actually communicate, things like that. And then he said something that was really hard. He was like, do I think you're going to be the greatest to ever do it? No. Do I think you're going to be kind of on that level? He's like, no. And when he said that, that was really difficult, because I've spent a lot of years doing this. And so in my mind, I'm like, crap. I'm like, you know, I was really deflated. But what it was, though, is that it really changed me, because once they did that, the pressure went off. And I was like, but then it made me start digging in communication, what can I be the best at? Why do I need to become a great communicator? And I realized in the other things that I do, coaching, being a catalyst, Like, I need to be really good at this. And what that led to was actually my communication has gone to a whole different level because I took the pressure off of it. So I told you that story is, I think, one of the ways you find out you need to have somebody in your life who actually is willing to speak truth, and someone who actually knows you, cares about you, knows a lot of your background, your upbringing, but is willing, and also maybe even have a skill set and whatever the thing is to be able to speak to you. I think so many times trying to discover stuff on your own can be very dangerous because there's so many things in the backdrop of that. There's so many insecurities. There's so much, issues from our past that can get in the way and cloud our judgment and kind of seeing what's true. So I would say to answer that, I think you really need to have somebody in your life to actually help you, because if you fail, they may be like, no, this is part of it. But we see the raw skill. But somebody can be like, nah, dude, I have a client right now like that they're not great. They're not a great communicator. And finally, I had to communicate that to them. You're just not, that doesn't mean they can't be good at other stuff, but don't waste your time trying to become better at this, because at your best, you'll be average. At best, your lid is average, but over here, your lid is elite. So don't spend that time. Spend your time on what you can be elite at.
Yeah, and even in terms of communication, it seems like when we use the term communicator as a society, it's like keynote speaker.
Yep.
Whereas I think, even because I know the person that you're talking about, you're basically putting them in a limit of you're not going to be the best keynote speaker.
Yes.
But whenever it comes to this particular topic with these specific people, you are the best person to teach them how to do X, Y, Z. And that requires you communicating the things that you know and the things that you live out. Yep. 2 more things. The first one is it's almost like them telling you that. Mm-hmm. Change your scoreboard to being, I want to be the best communicator ever, which is so broad. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Who is the best communicator? How are they the best communicator? There's so many different people that come to mind. Mm-hmm. And it made you focus more on what makes you a really good communicator, which is to unlock authenticity, to be a really good coach. The limitation, it seems like it gave you so much freedom to be who you are. Can you share more on that?
Yeah. It really did, because what it led me to is even the style. When I communicate, it is really I'm trying to unlock something in a story form. I don't want to just tell you. Some people are communicators, right? Where they get up there to say, okay, well, hey, today we're going to talk on the subject of whatever, basketball. Here are my 3 things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about dribbling, passing, shooting today, and how you can be better at these 3 things. First, dribbling, and then they go through the whole thing. For me, I want it to be a mystery. You know what I mean? Because I think that I want you to have the experiential part of it first. And as you have the experiential part, you're wondering where we're going. And so you're tapping into your senses. You're thinking through things in your own life. You're like, okay, and you're kind of walking through this process, because what I really wanted to do is I want this to unlock something inside of you. So it really helped me in the style of how I communicated too, to say, I think I could be really good at this. And so then what that led me to is when I came to coaching and actually, being a catalyst, it was the same thing, to where now I was able to be a lot more clear, a lot more direct. Learning to sometimes I cut my sentences off and I communicate, because in my brain, I'm ADD, I'm always thinking to the next thing. And so sometimes I'll say something and then just not think I finished the sentence, and I don't finish the sentence. It's actually helped me with that. It's where I become aware in conversations now to finish things. Don't jump to the next thing until you finish out. So yes, the limits actually helped me become a more effective communicator.
Because I'm not sure that you completely answered this, and maybe you're being Mr. Miyagi.
All right.
For those people that are listening, and there's something in their head that they're like, I want to be an expert at that.
Yep.
And they're experiencing failure back to back or criticism back to back.
Yep.
What is kind of the grid to know whether they should keep at it, or whether that is results telling them this is just not who you are? 3
things. I think one, there's one big thing, but there's 3 things. One, do you actually have a skill set to do it, right? So that's the first thing. 2, are you passionate about it? Which, okay, people say yes. But here's the 3rd thing. Is anybody ever paying you to do it? If you keep doing something and no one's either, when I say paying you, I would say this, sometimes it's financial, but sometimes it's man, are people following? Are people wanting to consume whatever it is that you're doing, or whatever the situation is? If it's your art, are people wanting to buy it? Are people wanting to view it? Whatever, your photography. And if they're not, you have a hobby, not like a calling or things like that. I think we sometimes miss that, and you know what? Because what we do is we hear all the stories of the movies and the stories we hear about are the one in like 10,000 or the one in 100,000. The stories of the old movie Rudy, the one walk-on guy who got in at the end of the Notre Dame game. It was his whole joy to get there. Like, I watched that movie and I'm like, dude, that movie pissed me off because what it did is I knew this. It took a bunch of dudes down a pathway to where, you know what, you're spending all this time to never play, to where you could have spent your energy on something you're really, really good at. And so I think that's where, to answer your question, I think you got to, like, at some point, there's got to be results and you got to be getting paid for it or asked to do it more, not just kind of you just kind of doing the thing.
So what are some signs that you might be disillusioned towards the things that you think you're good at?
Well, one, I think it's looking around, again, people around you. Like, who are the people complimenting you? Is it always like family members? Is it like,
your mom's friends?
Yeah, your mom's, like your mom's friends. Is it people who are like it's your friend, you know, like you have the super positive friends who never say anything negative, right? Like, are they always the ones? But like your friends who you know, like who you just know they keep it real, like they never really like compliment what you do, or they never say like, oh man, or they give you kind of like a halfway answer, you know what I'm saying? Or they find some really random thing about what you're doing that's not the main thing, but they're, oh yeah, like, you know, even though you're making this great painting, they're like, oh yeah, but the frame looks awesome. Like, you know what I'm saying? Versus being like, oh, the actual painting. I think those are just ways you have to look at stuff. And I think that's why people get like delusioned by that. And then also, here's the thing. When you're doing it, like, you just got to ask yourself more and more, like, am I really, like, ask yourself, am I seeing this clear? And then also, why do I have to do this so bad? You know, because a lot of times people will say, I just got to do it. Like, unlocking authenticity for me, it's not about, you know, when I, like, it's not, and helping people, and I do this by helping people write new rules. I was doing this when no one was paying me. I just love to do it. And so, and then here's the other thing. Are you getting any results? So do you have results from what you do? So let's say it's coaching, right? Let's say it's you want to be an executive, because this happens a lot. People want to be life coaches, right? Which is always interesting to me that a lot of people want to be life coaches, suck in their own life, and now you want to go help other people. So cool. But here's the deal. But do people get better? So if you're trying to coach somebody, do people get better? Are people saying, man, no, I was here and I went to this place? And I think if you're not seeing results from it, then that could be a sign of being disillusioned. Now, again, you don't want to quit too early, but you also want to, at some point, you need to see results in what you're actually doing. That's why I think you got to be able to evaluate the fruit of your work too. Yeah.
What about like if somebody is into something that's like a very saturated market, and maybe they're good at what they're doing, but like a lot of people are good at this and they feel like this is their thing, and like, is it about getting money for it, getting like achieving success in terms of success being people noticing it, or is it about like, I'm really, really good at this, but a lot of people are really, really good at this, I can do it anyway? Like, what would you say to someone who like loves something that's a very saturated market?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, let me just first start off by this. When I talk about, man, you could be the best, let me just make sure, and I'm glad you asked this because I need to clarify this part. Being the best doesn't mean you're going to be like, say it's art, right? Like, being the best doesn't mean you're about to be freaking Picasso, like, you know what I'm saying? Or you're going to be like Monet, like, no. Like, that may not be you, but being the best may be, man, you've maxed out your capacity at this thing. And that is being the best for you. So I would say, so I think that's the first thing. Is like, you have to, which goes to this, you have to determine what your scoreboard is. So like you're saying, it's a saturated market, but you really, really love to do it, right? So then what I would say is, okay, great, but did you put a scoreboard there, right? Is there a scoreboard? What does it mean to be successful? For that person, it may not be to like sell a bunch of stuff, make a bunch of money. It's like, man, I just really want to just create this, and that's just my scoreboard. I think that's great for you to do that. But here's the biggest thing. We talk about people being like, you know, you can't do everything great. What I'm talking more about is everyone who then gets super frustrated and angry or sad or depressed because they're not seeing movement, whatever that movement is. But if you're like, just like, I love doing this and I just got joy doing it and I'm content with it, dude, go for it. And so again, I appreciate the question, because I think sometimes, like, you know, it's important to clarify that. Like, if you're finding, I'm more after this because I see so many people stripped of joy and happiness in life because they're trying to chase something that, like, they're never going to achieve. You know, they're never going to achieve whatever that thing is because they may be working on this or they may not have the skill set fully to do this. So does that make sense? Yeah. So
I feel like some of what we're just talking about too, like you said, defining the scoreboard. Because today in Culture Creators, I'm going to reference something we talked about later. We talked about what it looks like to be can you talk through the different positions?
So we talked about, like, on a team, are you someone who just gets some, like, you're kind of a role player, you get minutes, right? You're a role player.
Oh, yeah.
Are you a starter?
Minutes, starter,
all-star, Hall of Famer. Yeah, those are 4
Whereas
parts.
It's like, if you're in an oversaturated market, practically, I think you do have to ask yourself, am I going to be a Hall of Famer? Am I going to be an all-star? Because in an oversaturated market, if I'm in minutes, the likelihood of me getting, like, paid for this at the level or in comparison to the other people who are in the market might be more minimal, but I feel like that requires a level of self-awareness to your own skill set to accept what that might be.
Yeah, and I think it's okay. Like, again, it's like, but then you have to realize, okay, if I want to do this for my career, okay, or whatever, and I just maybe make, you know, other people in this industry may make $500,000, but you may make $40,000, but you just love what you do. Are you okay with that? Are you okay with living below your means? You know what I'm saying? I think what happens for people, they want that, but then they still want to, that's what I see a lot. People, they only have, like, you know, they're role players, right? Their minutes, they're role players, but they want to get paid like all-stars. Well, you don't have that ability or skill set, and that's okay, but you're maximizing this and you're finding joy in other areas, because I always tell people on that idea of a Hall of Famer or a starter or whatever, there's more responsibilities for those people that they're going to have to deal with that you may not have to deal with. And so I just think it's just being realistic and just drawing the proper scoreboard that you can actually have, like, in your life.
So what about the people who find themselves in a place where, and I think you do this sometimes, so I'd love to hear how you work through it, where they tell themselves that they are a minute or a starter, but it's like, no, like, in your lifetime at this thing you can become a Hall of Famer, or right now, no, you are an all-star, and your next step is learning what it looks like to become a Hall of Famer. Because I feel like that's kind of glorified in society, to, like, talk yourself down as like a form of humility. So what would be your advice to people who need to embrace the greatness?
Yeah, so when I would ask somebody, you know, I would pull that out of them and help them kind of, like, walk through it. But I think that, so you need to have somebody who can help validate that. And I think once you have somebody who's actually, who, you know, who's a truth teller for you, who does that, then I think the next thing you have to do is just constantly, like, work at it, and you have to remind yourself of that. Because I think that you're going to be held at a greater level of accountability for those things. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to flip and change a lot in my life right now, is that how do I build, how do I grow, and reminding myself what I could be really, really good at, you know, just constantly reminding myself. So I think that's really important.
One of the first things that we always recommend for people to do whenever it relates to self-awareness is to talk to other people. How do you become a person who's really good at helping others do that? Like, how do you become the person who's like, I'm going to help the people that I love be like aware of their pitfalls, but also someone who helps them become really aware of their greatness? Because I feel like we talk about a lot about how you need to go to somebody else, but we don't ever talk about how, like, you need to be the person who goes to somebody else and tells them, like, here's what I've noticed you're really great at, or here's what I appreciate about you, or here's just what you don't do that really well, and I feel like I need to let you know about that. How do we become people who do that better?
I think the first thing that you have to do, I think, and again, it does start with you. Are you self-aware? Because I think the more that you're self-aware, the more I think you can help somebody. You know, we always say you can't export, you know, what you don't have. So I think that's the first thing. I think the next part of that process is are you willing? One is, does that person give you access? Let's say they do. They give you access. Yes, I want to be that. I want you to be this for me. Then you've got to be willing to have the toughness that at any point in time you could say something that could really affect your friendship or your relationship with this person. Because not everyone, because I tell people, everyone will tell you yes. I mean, go look around. Tell me the last time you found somebody who told you, no, I don't want you to keep it real with me. Everybody wants you to keep it real with them. But why is it that so many people still walk in this and so many people walk away from relationships when people start being honest with them? Because it's hurtful. It's painful. It is painful for somebody you love who has this dream or whatever they've been doing, for you to look at them and to tell them straight up, like, hey, like, you can't do this. This is not going to work for you. You're not good at this. Here's the results. You've been doing this now for 5 years now, and you're not seeing any results of this, right? That's a hard thing, because now they're looking at you as the dream killer. And let me tell you this, that is a hard thing for people to receive, for you to be the actual dream killer. And so I think, do you have the toughness? Do you actually want to do it? Because I tell people, you got to be really careful if that's the person you want to be, because it will affect your relationships and friendships. And the other thing, too, is you then have to really work. Once you see what they're good at, you got to be one of you got to constantly, just communicate that. You have to know how they're wired, too. Like Jalen, my son. Jalen naturally is going to think out of he's going to think way higher, right? So a lot of times for me, and some of this is good and bad, but I have to pull him down. Like, no, you're not good at that. No, because he naturally thinks that. Now, I think I went overboard with that a little bit, trying to help him. So I think it's kind of stripped some things of him. But I think that then some people, they're they're more down, and you got to constantly build them up. So I think you got to know the person as well.
Sorry, I'm just picturing Jalen in my head.
Oh my God.
I feel like for those that are listening, depending on where you come from, you may not know that me and Adrian's relationship goes beyond employer and employee.
Yes.
So I've had the incredible luxury of being able to have great relationships with his children, and I'm laughing because just yesterday, Wendy, Adrian's wife, we were talking about how Jalen used to watch Max and Ruby, and she had to have him stop watching Max and Ruby because he would start because in Max and Ruby, the child always thinks that he cannot follow the rules, and in the end, in the show, he actually gets away with it. Yeah. And she was like, that was so dangerous for Jalen, because he is that kid.
Yes.
He's gonna do what he wants to do, and the thing is that the odds really are 50-50. He might get away with it, but if he doesn't, it's just going to be really bad.
It is. And the truth is this. I think it's kind of I always tell people, it's God's governor in Jalen's life. The God honest truth about it, he can't get away with stuff. He really does. He'll try to do something, and then it's the most random ways that we'll find out. You know what I'm saying? It'll just be oh yeah, he saw this, whatever. And again, it hasn't been anything crazy, but it's just he'll do something and you're like, dude, what? I find out, or he'll forget to do whatever. So yes, but Max and Ruby, that used to be funny, because it was we watch it and we're like, why is he acting like that? And then Wendy was it's freaking Max and Ruby.
She said one day it just clicked, and she immediately went and turned it off and was like, we're never watching.
Yeah, we couldn't write Max and Ruby. Man, hey, shout out to I miss some of those cartoons, the Backyardigans.
Oh, stop. The Backyardigans?
Did you see that
Phineas
she passed away? The actual writer.
Oh my God! I thought you were gonna say Uniqua, the voice of Uniqua.
No, legit, that was her. Yes, the writer of the Backyardigans. And so I never knew who she was. And then they showed her. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Man,
okay.
Yeah,
Uniqua,
she's a black
Uniqua,
woman.
We got Tyrone.
Listen,
Pablo.
When I heard Uniqua and Tyrone, I'm
value diversity on the Backyardigans.
I'm like, she is black. Whoever did this one, I was like, yo, she brought. Hey, before DEI was a thing, she brought it to the cartoons. Man,
before the executives were willing to accept DEI, they had their kids watching the Backyardigans.
That's what I'm saying.
She said, I'm moving the furniture in your home. You have no idea.
No idea. We had the one white dude, Austin, on there. You know what I'm saying? You had, who else did we have with? Tasha. That was the other one. Yeah, Tasha, Uniqua, Pablo, Tyrone, and Austin.
Okay. Yeah, that's incredible. Anyways, we had a little side quest. We'll come back to it. Okay, so on the topic of, again, we always push people to ask others. Mm-hmm. How do you know when to invite people in?
Yep.
And obviously when you do that, I feel like some of what you're talking about is we ask people for their opinions.
Yep.
But then when it comes to our relationships, we don't choose to trust the people that we say we have a relationship with when it comes down to it.
Yep.
So how do you know when to invite somebody in and when it's important for you to take ownership and carry the weight and be honest with yourself? Because I feel like you can go back and forth between extremes.
Yeah. I think first it's knowing yourself. You have to first be aware, because if you're naturally someone who doesn't like, you don't like to ask advice, or you like to do things just on your own, and and you kind of are bent that way, then I would say lean into that. And I think if you're like me, I used to always like want everyone's opinion. And I think so I think it's important to know, like, so here's the thing, when you're asking somebody their opinion, why are you asking them like their opinion? Are you doing it to get approval? Are you doing it because you're like, you don't want to step out and make that decision? And so I think you just have to be aware. So it's not like a formula. I just think you need to just sometimes be aware. Sometimes it's like early on when you're younger, I think asking people is important, especially in today's generation where everyone is just saying, hey, do your own thing. Don't let anyone tell you what to do. Remember, we're talking about the age of authenticity. No one from the outside can help determine that for you. So if that's the case, what you have to start doing then is, man, maybe early on you actually have more people or a couple people speak into your life and you listen, because that's going to help you learn how to hear better, so on and so forth.
One of the things that we say a lot here is do the autopsy, which is obviously whenever something dies, you do the autopsy to figure out what happened.
Yep.
How do you do the autopsy on, the things that you are good at, the things that you're not good at, especially when something fails?
Yeah.
How do you do that accurately without allowing like fears and anxieties to dictate the report essentially that you're going to take away from that?
Well, I think that, the point of why you do it, the autopsy, is just to get better. And so what you want to do is just really look at the information, because what you're trying to do, I think it's your mentality. When you go into it, you're not trying to look at this as like, oh, what a failure am I? You're trying to look at like, oh, what could I have done good? What could I have done better? But also the other part of doing an autopsy, because I know we talk about using that word autopsy. So normally, it is, something's dead. But it's this idea of like, really, you want to see what you did well. Because I think so many times we go through, what did I do wrong? No, your main thing you want to do, even though it may not have worked, what did I do really well? Then also, what didn't go well? Was it because I didn't? Sometimes I wasn't leaning more into the things I was doing well, and I tried to do something different. Sometimes you just miss, and the whole point is it's all learning. So I think when you go into it, the way you keep yourself from those places of fear is that you have to look at it as just a learning experience for you.
How do you read emotional data? Because I feel like sometimes people hear the idea of do the autopsy and they think like, okay, let me think critically about this. 1 + 1 = 2. Let me not like bring my emotions into it. But I think when we do that at times, we're not learning how to navigate our emotional structures well by just setting them to the side. I think wisdom is like, no, what are my emotions telling me, and how do I follow the thread on how the situation might be impacting me in a way that is useful.
So going back to the story I told about my preaching communication coach, when he said that to me, right, that moment, and I'm using this because I was like, I wanted to go back because I walked away and I was like, and I felt some type of way. But when I started doing the autopsy of that moment, here's the deal. I started realizing it was important for me to dig into saying, why did I feel the way that I felt? Why did I feel so defeated when he said that to me? And what was going on inside of me? And it made me start going down this road and this thread of like feeling that like, I'm good, but I'm just not good enough. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like it started speaking to a lot of those things of my own like kind of life messaging, so on and so forth. So going through that allowed me to actually find what was underneath. So I think the answer to that, I think you need to pull your emotions in moments to say, what was going on? What was I feeling in this moment? Because sometimes something may fail because you were like, your emotions were speeding you up too fast. Like for example, sometimes like you may have made this is what you're doing is the right decision, but you try to speed it up too quick, which ultimately made it fail. So you have to know what your emotional state is. Sometimes there may be fear there, which slowed you down, which if you were a little bit quicker, it would have been better. So I do think you need to understand your emotional state in this process, because remember, almost all the decisions we make in our life, good or bad, whatever, it started because you felt some type of way. Like you think about, you go back on a decision that you made, because I think a lot of think about a relationship. Sometimes people get in relationships, and when you actually talk to them after the relationship's over, they can literally walk you back with like, yeah, like, man, 2 dates in, I knew this was a bad situation, but because of where I was at, and because of my insecurity, or because of whatever those things are, they go down that road. But they felt it then. And so that's where I think you have to pull those things in to actually help yourself.
For everything that we are really good at, there's almost a shadow side to it for something that we are really bad at. And something that confuses me at times is how much do you work to develop the shadow side part of the thing that you're really good at? Because when you're a leader, whenever you're in a relationship, whether it's through marriage or in friendships, people are being expected to kind of dance with your shadow side. And so what's the responsibility as a person to not, like, is it, oh, I just am aware of that? Or is it I'm aware of it and I do whatever it takes to minimize the impact of that?
I think it's different in different situations. So start with like a relationship, right? You talk about a marriage. I think it's important to be aware, definitely be aware of your shadow side. And I also think you need to be able to allow the person, the significant other, to like, hey, I naturally can do this, right? And so when I do this, I need for you to tell me when I'm doing this, because this I know can be impactful for you. Because what you want to do, if they can give you real time feedback in that moment, you're like, oh, you can start to learn, okay, when I started to feel this way, or when I did this, that came off this way, and you start to become aware. Because I think the more you're aware of something, when it starts to happen, you now can self-regulate that situation, right? So, for example, the shadow side of me, and say one of the parts of it in my marriage is that I think very fast. Like, I think very fast. I'm solving things, I'm moving, whatever. And what can happen is Wendy is a processor. And so sometimes what I can do is, if I think she's like, what I do when I don't think she's like, when she's processing information, I am just like, oh my gosh, like this is it. And what it can do, it can come off as I'm talking down to her, which is not what I'm trying to do. It's just, there's this part of me that's just like, it could be, I've already figured it out, but why can't we just do this? And that part for me, but she's really trying to think deeper about what's going on. It doesn't make me thinking about it, because I think about it quicker, better. That doesn't make it better at all. It's just the fact, because sometimes when I think too quick, I can miss something that she's not going to miss. And so a lot of times I have to tell her, she has to like tell me, hey, when you did this, because I don't even realize sometimes I'm doing it. And she's like, when you did this, man, I felt like you were talking down to me, because because I talk very direct, and it can be kind of sharp. And so again, I'm not raising my voice, but it's just kind of very, very direct. And so I'm like, oh, I didn't recognize I was doing that. And so then I have to kind of work through there. Now, in an environment that you're working, I think that if you have a shadow side, you have to build a team around you. That your shadow side, what would be a shadow side, they're able to protect you because they have strengths there, and you're able to do that with them. So that's why I think building a team is incredibly important in the workplace, because, when you're in the workplace, we want to, your strong side, your thing you do well, we want to see more and more of that. But also you need to have people that are helping you be aware, but also protecting you, you know what I'm saying? From the shadow side. So that's a lot for me. Like, I know in me, like, how I only need like 10%, 15% of information, right? I can process it quick, whatever. Well, why is it important to have you and, Cody, GT, others around me? Is because for others who may work lower down in our organization, they spend a lot of time doing something, and so they want to give me the 70, 80, 90% of the whole thing. And I'm just like, and I can come off as such like a tool, because like once I know the information, I'm just like, okay, why are we sitting here? And I know they spent that time, but I know like it's part of their growth and development. That's why someone like you do a good job of process with people. So it's like, okay, hey, Bree, you meet with the people a lot before they ever get to me, because you'll tell them, yep, don't say that, do this will help get this here. And so you actually help in that process. So that's a way that you can cover it by building a good team.
Yeah. So sometimes, especially within those that are younger, there's a lot more language of like, yeah, I'm just not going to change.
Yeah,
I'm just not going to change. And I think there is an aspect of that is inappropriate. Mm-hmm. And then there's some level of wisdom that's like, this thing about me that just might not be it for everybody is going to show up for the rest of my life, because I'm never going to be full, like I'm never going to be complete. And so how do you navigate the tension of that?
I think it's about your posture of like internally. When people say that a lot of times, that is their insecure response a lot. They didn't like the fact of like someone maybe calling them out. It made them feel some type of way. And so it's kind of like, well, fine, I'm just never going to change. Now they may not say it just like that, but that's really their response. I think it's always your posture, because like, yeah, there's certain parts of you that like, man, I wish this was better, but it's not going to really change, right? Like for me, like I wish that I like wanted to know, like I wish I could like help people, for example, like I ask questions to help them self-discover, right? Like I really wish like I could have like the temperament and the patience to really help people self-discover. Like I've really tried to like, let me just ask questions, let me do this. And when I'm sitting there like, oh my freaking gosh, I know the answer, let me just tell you, so then we can just go do whatever we need to do, right? Like I realize that I'm like, I wish I could do that better. So when I say like, man, I'm probably not going to change a ton in that, but like my heart is more of empathetic. Like I wish I was better at that, but I'm not going to be better at that. So then what I do, let me put somebody around you that really can help you do that, because I think this is really needed for you. So I think it's about the posture of your heart, not like, it's not just like, kind of like, this is me, F the world. It's like, no, I wish I was better. There's so many things that are my shadow. So I'm like, dude, I wish I was better at that. But then also I'm like, I'm never going to be better at that. I'm not going to spend time trying to get better at that, because I'm never going to be great at that. But I do the work of putting things and other people around me, or putting practices to try to help mitigate that.
I think that some of that is getting into counting the cost and like the cost of being who you are supposed to be. Because even though what you're saying right now to like the average listener might not sound very hard, like, it might be like, oh, that's okay. That's okay that you're not good at that. But whenever you're actually in the day to day, and some of our listeners may not know that you also lead a church. So there's an idea of what it looks like to be pastoral. And then also adding on, we're talking about the different types of players. When you are an all-star player, you get more playtime. Therefore, there's more criticism for what you can and what you cannot do, and how you perform at any given moment.
Absolutely.
And so there's definitely still, even though it sounds chill, it's definitely not. There's a level of cost that comes with you accepting that. And that you really can't do that because of how hard you've tried to do that when it's not who you are.
Yeah, and especially, I think it's in every like kind of category or industry, whatever, but like, yeah, definitely in the church space, because I navigate a bunch of different worlds. And so in that, in a church space, people can have like opinions of what they think a pastor should be. And for me, I am very clear. I believe the Bible. I believe, and in that, so I allow that to define me, not culture. I allow what is the responsibility for my role that the Bible actually teaches. Okay, cool. I do that. I don't let culture decide that. An example. My wife, certain times in church culture, it's like, the wife of the pastor or whatever, they're normally, kind of right there doing a women's ministry thing, doing this, stuff like that. That was never Wendy. And so people had this expectation, and I just crush it from the beginning. I'm like, man, at the end of the day, yes, you get me, you don't get my wife. Like my wife, my expectation for my wife is what my expectation is for everybody else that's in here. She's an owner, a member of this place. And so I have the expectation the same way that I have for you. And I think it's like crushing those things, but there's also responsibility that comes with it. And that's why I tell people, it sounds great to want to be in those roles, be an all-star, Hall of Fame, or do whatever. But what comes with that is really difficult. Yeah, there's some great stuff. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of benefits you get, but there's a lot of negative to that. Because listen, people like they find joy. The natural human response is to find joy that when you're really good, it's joy when you come down. Like they're trying to find reasons. I mean, look at this. I mean, we're a few weeks removed as we're recording this from the Drake Kendrick Lamar. The level of how people, again, though I'm not the biggest Drake fan, but the level of people just celebrate and wanting his demise, right? I mean, he's been on this run for 10 years. And so, I mean, people are like, yes, he's coming down. And here's what's going to happen. When he gets stripped down lower, then it's going to have all these people with empathy for him to see him come back up. So that's what I say. When you're up at that top, you got to be okay with the fact of like, yeah, there are a lot of people who don't want you to be successful. And here's why. Because a lot of their insecurities come out. They wish there's envy that comes out. And there's also parts of you that you don't even recognize you're probably being a jerk too. You know what I mean? So it's just all those things are kind of there, but you got to be prepared for it and walk in it.
Something that we say a lot is the term in the zone.
Yep.
So can you tell a story about a time that you've been in the zone and kind of what tells you that you're there? Because we have a lot of young listeners and they're trying to figure out like what it means to like something. What does it mean to be passionate about something? What does that feel like? What does it look like to still have to work hard within it? So can you tell a story about a time where you felt that and what it felt like and what it made you think about?
The first time I ever preached, I was doing a Bible study. It was like for athletes at Florida State. We're doing at they were having at somebody's house, and so the person who led it, he was out of town. I was like, "Hey, I want you to do it." And I'm like, "Okay." I was 22, 23, right? So I was like, "Oh man, okay, whatever." And I'll never forget when I got up there, it just felt right. Now, when I look back on it, was it like the greatest sermon somebody ever written? No. But it was one of those things where there was a feeling that I had where I'm like, this feels right for me. You know what I mean? In that moment. So like what you started looking for, you're like, okay, this feels right. But then there was like in that moment, you're like, it was flowing. There was an impact that was there as well. And there's the other thing too. You just like, for me, I'm like, dude, I want to keep doing this. So a lot of times you feel that zone is when you're like, dude, like I just want to keep doing it. And it wasn't, I'm like, I don't care if it's one person in the room or it's like 1,000 people in the room. I just want to do this, right? That was it. I have felt it as well, in the environment of actual like, when I get in the room and I'm able to help somebody disrupt something in their life. To help them think differently, to help them become like unlocking authenticity. So it would start for me when I would be on the basketball court and I was doing my basketball skill training business. It wasn't the fact of like, oh, I'm on the court and I'm in the zone. It was the fact that when I could get the person to actually believe this is who you are and help them develop it. It was like life to me. So one of my first NBA clients was a guy by the name of Al Thornton. Shout out to my man Al. And so Al was coming off of he was coming off an injury, and he had lost a step. Again, he was super athletic, had lost a step. But when I was in there with him, helping him shape his game to what it was going to be for the next phase of his life, dude, I literally enjoyed going in there every day with him. And it was a tough battle. Me and Al would argue about stuff. We would do these things. But, man, it was like a joy for me to go work with him because I was literally helping somebody unlock who they really were and who they were now. And even to this day, he's still playing. And when me and him talk, he always says, he's like, man, that moment, this was almost 10 years ago. They thought his career was going to be over with. He's still playing. He's like, dude, that moment changed my life because he's like, no one really believed in me anymore. You believed in me and you actually helped me get to this new level. But when I was doing it, it didn't seem like work. That's the other thing. When you're in the zone sometimes, it doesn't feel like work. You're like, I could just do this for whatever. I could do this for free. And so I think that's that's a lot, but I think that's when you hit the zone. That's the best way I can say it, is when you feel like, I would do this for like they would have to pay me to do this. I would just do this. That's when you start to find, that's a beginning sign that maybe you're hitting something that maybe you're good at. Well, guys, I hope today was helpful. This idea that you can't be great at everything. And here's the one practical thing that I want to really encourage you with is to look in your life and what are the things that you're currently doing right now. Whether if you're the roles that you play, that could be, you may be a vice president of an organization. You also you may be a mother, you may be a father, you may be your friend, you may be someone who's a community leader, you may be someone who serves as the treasurer on your son's baseball team or whatever it may be. In all those roles that you're in, ask yourself, can I be the best at this? Like, what role am I? Am I a role player? Am I a starter? Am I an all-star? Am I a Hall of Famer? And it's okay. Like, where do I have potential? And so whatever those things are, man, be able to do that. And then now you get to know where you can spend your time, spend your energy, whatever, and then begin to discover. And until next time, keep writing new rules.